Europe 2019. The ambitious EU leadership stands before the world and announces the European Green Deal, a revolutionary blueprint that promises to make the continent carbon neutral by 2050 while pioneering a new model of prosperity. World leaders applaud, climate activists celebrate. The vision seems unstoppable. But fast forward to late 2025, and a radically different picture emerges. In October, the EU Parliament experiences a shocking political collapse. A secret ballot blocks a key Green Deal proposal with 318 votes against it. In November, European Commission officials announced delays to critical sustainability targets. By December, the automotive industry wins a stunning reversal. The planned ban on combustion engines gets axed. Meanwhile, manufacturers are fleeing Germany, farmers are revolting across Europe, and European industries are losing market share to global competitors. The European Green Deal wasn't just environmental policy. It was a complete reimagining of the European economy. Launched in December 2019 by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, it promised to transform the EU into the world's first climate-neutral economic powerhouse. The goal was audacious: net zero emissions by 2050, with a 55% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. The architects of this plan believed something radical: that you could simultaneously fight climate change, boost the economy, and create jobs. They called it Keynesian economics, the idea that massive public investment in green infrastructure would jumpstart growth. The numbers sounded incredible. The European Parliament's own research suggested the Green Deal could generate up to 270,000 new jobs over 2 years and potentially add 1.5% to GDP growth. And then, reality hit. Germany, the industrial heartland of Europe, became ground zero for the Green Deal's unintended consequences. The transition away from Russian gas, accelerated by the Ukraine war, combined with the push toward renewable energy, created a perfect storm of volatility and expense. In 2022, wholesale electricity prices in Germany skyrocketed. Some markets saw prices exceed 400 euros per megawatt hour, an astronomical figure when renewables were supposed to bring prices down. The problem was structural. Europe's electricity market was still pricing power based on the marginal cost of gas, meaning that even when renewables dominated supply, prices remained tethered to fossil fuel costs. This energy crisis didn't just hit households, it decimated German industry. BASF, the global chemical giant and a cornerstone of German manufacturing, made a stunning announcement. It was dramatically scaling back operations in Germany and moving production to China and the United States. Why? Energy costs in Germany had become prohibitively expensive compared to competitors abroad. Other industrial giants followed suit. Volkswagen announced major job cuts. Energy-intensive sectors like steel, aluminum, and chemicals began a slow exodus. Then came the steel industry's humiliation. In June 2025, ArcelorMittal, the world's second-largest steel producer, made a decision that sent shockwaves through Brussels. The company abandoned plans to transform 2 German facilities into carbon-neutral operations using hydrogen-powered furnaces. Why? Despite 1.3 billion euros in subsidies from the German government, the company couldn't justify the investment because German electricity prices were simply too high. France, with its abundant nuclear power, was attracting green steel investment. Germany, ironically, despite all its green ambitions and subsidies, was losing out. Europe wasn't just struggling internally, it was being outmaneuvered globally. China and the United States were both pursuing aggressive industrial policies that made European regulations look like self-imposed handicaps. China was dominant in renewable energy manufacturing and battery production. America had passed the Inflation Reduction Act, offering massive subsidies to clean energy industries, directly attracting investment away from Europe. In early 2023, something unexpected happened. Across Europe, in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Spain, and Germany, farmers took to the streets. Tractors blocked highways, protests dominated headlines. The farmers weren't client deniers, they were economically desperate. Their grievances were specific. Stricter environmental regulations were raising production costs, while cheap imports from Ukraine were undercutting them. They faced the prospect of mandatory pesticide reductions, environmental regulations on how they could use their land, and mounting financial pressure. The Green Deal, which had seemed abstract to many, suddenly felt very real and threatening to rural economies. By February 2024, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made a dramatic U-turn. The Sustainable Use of Pesticides Regulation, SUR, which would have mandated a 15% reduction in pesticide use by 2030, was scrapped. Von der Leyen called it a symbol of polarization. The EU's ban on combustion engine cars from 2035 had been a cornerstone commitment. It represented Europe saying, "We are serious about the energy transition." It was meant to drive innovation, force the automotive industry towards electrification, and signal global leadership on climate action. By 2025, Germany, home to Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, had launched a coordinated lobbying campaign against the ban. The argument was pragmatic. Demand for electric vehicles hadn't met expectations. Chinese competitors were undercutting European automakers, and American tariffs were crushing European exports. The ban seemed too ambitious given market realities. In December 2025, the European Commission announced it would reverse course. Instead of a zero-emission requirement by 2035, the new target would allow a 90% reduction in CO2 emissions, meaning that a limited number of combustion engines could still be registered. While Europe debated and delayed, a geopolitical reality became impossible to ignore. China had dramatically outpaced Europe in renewable energy manufacturing and battery production. The transition to electric vehicles wasn't happening on Europe's timeline because European companies couldn't compete with Chinese and American firms on price and technology. Finally, we have to talk about the people, because ultimately voters can veto the Green Deal. For years, climate action in Europe was a consensus issue. But as the policies moved from abstract targets to hitting people's wallets, the consensus fractured. Take housing. The EU wants gigantic investments in retrofitting old, drafty buildings to make them energy efficient. A noble goal. But who pays for the new heat pump and triple-glazed windows in a working-class neighborhood in Budapest or Athens? If the Green Deal means you can't afford to drive your old diesel car to work, you can't afford to heat your home, and your grocery bill has doubled because of new farming regulations. So, is Europe's Green Deal backfiring? If we define backfiring as creating unintended economic damage, social unrest, and new geopolitical vulnerabilities that threaten the project itself, then yes, in many significant ways, it is. The execution has been flawed. It has relied too much on regulation and not enough on incentives. It has moved faster on dismantling the old energy system than it has on building the new reliable one. It has been naive about the geopolitical realities of critical mineral supply chains. We are seeing a pivot. The recent concessions to farmers show that Brussels is realizing it can't force this transition down people's throats. There is a growing realization that Europe needs its own version of the American IRA. More carrots, fewer sticks. A focus on industrial strategy, not just environmental regulation. If Europe fails, it won't just be a continental failure. It will be a signal to the rest of the world that a democratic, industrialized society cannot rapidly decarbonize without collapsing its economy. And that is a signal Europe cannot afford to send. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.